course. So that course is focused all around knowing the students that you serve, and also digging into your own bias, because we all have bias and how that affects your ability to be a teacher in a classroom and a culturally responsive teacher. You'll also take some courses that are directly related to your content and your pedagogy. So those are called our instructional skill building sessions, where we'll teach you how to dig into lesson things like lesson planning and build out a great lesson plan, as well as facilitating those lesson plans. Because it's one thing to build a great lesson plan, it's another thing to be on stage in front of your kids and actually deliver that instruction. Um, so during pre-service training, you'll go through all of that coursework. There's also field experience. I'll give you both versions of field experience. I'll give you the pre-COVID version. The pre-COVID version is when you would go into an actual Baltimore City public school classroom, and there will be students in that classroom, and you'll take the lesson plans that you built during pre-service training and outside of pre-service training in your own time, and you would deliver those lesson plans. You have a coach who would be assigned to you, as well as some other residents in your coach group who would help you to execute that lesson plan, give you feedback, and help you grow during that time. After pre-service training, when you actually go into the classroom, the Baltimore City Teaching Residency is its own certifying body. What that means is that a lot of alternative certification programs or teaching programs will coach you and work with you, but then you have to go to a college or a university to take courses in order to get your certification. The state of Maryland has said that our coursework is great coursework, and you don't need to do that. So we can actually facilitate that coursework for you. We'll continue to dig into that pedagogy, continue to dig into that diversity, equity, and inclusion, continue to dig into building that culture and that climate in your classroom, as well as making sure that you get in-classroom support. Now, in-classroom support during the school year is a lot different than in-class support during the summer. During the summer, you have a coach there all the time with you. When you go into the school year, your coach can't be there all the time with you. So your coach actually comes to visit you at a minimum 4 times per year. And we also have intensive coaching cycles. So the intensive coaching cycles would be if your coach prioritizes you for a time period, they'll work with you during an intensive coaching cycle. And for that cycle, they may actually be in your classroom working side by side with you each and every day. It really depends on where you are performing and how much help you actually need in a classroom. Now, post-COVID, things have changed a little bit. We weren't able to go directly into schools this summer, and so we did some simulated field experience, which means that you were teaching in front of a group of your peers and getting feedback. It was a really collaborative process, and we actually saw great results from that, with residents being able to plan effectively and get really, really deep into content. So we have that. You also will have access to our literacy coursework, in which is a state of Maryland mandated course, but it's really about teaching students how to read. And I'll say this very, very early. It is very, very early in the stage, but I'm all about being transparent. I don't care if you work in a pre-K classroom or if you work in a 12th grade classroom, you will have a student who is probably on a pre-K to 12th grade reading level. The reading levels just differ. And the reason for that is a lot of systemic problems that our children have faced through the years, whether that is not having a teacher in front of them for a certain amount of time, or teachers who have just failed them, or other issues. And that's really why we're here. We're here to be those people who help turn that around for students. So I hope that answered your question. I know it was a lot, but I hope that gave you a full picture of kind of how we support our teachers.
Thanks, Tavon. A couple of other quick ones. So someone asked about dates for pre-service training. Have they been released yet? So pre-service training is usually the last week in June. We usually use a high school that is not having summer school. And so the dates really center around when city schools determines when summer school is going to start. And that's, a lot of different things affect that. But over the past 3 years I've been here, it usually starts the last week in June if you're looking to plan around that time. Last week of June, and we end usually the first Friday of August. So it's a 6-week training. And so we will know more probably February, March of the exact day that we'll start. But it is 95% sure that last week we will be, and depending on what day that week it will be, it will maybe vary. But if you're planning around just big life events or travel or things of that nature, just know that last week of June, and for 6 weeks into the first Friday in August. Another thing that has come up is just relocation services. So in the chat, I am just sending out to everyone. This link is to a group called Teacher Props. And Teacher Props works with teachers specifically in Baltimore to help them get housing. They do a lot of work with realtor owners, landlords in the city. They have really reasonable price, nice apartments and places to live. They also have some resources about moving to the city and understanding like neighborhoods and things of that nature. In a newsletter that I will be sending out later, it'll have some other resources. There are a couple other education communities that really work to have teachers live in those apartment complexes. And those are a couple in the Baltimore area that I will get out to you. But Teacher Props is a great place to start. There's a lot of resources on there. Get on their mailing list. They send out a lot of information, especially as the spring comes. They will start letting you know or alerting you about deals, alerting you about opportunities to relocate, not only just places to stay, but just like information about neighborhoods, information about Baltimore in general. So that's a great place to start. Someone also asked about the ACT. If you've had a welcome call with me, you've heard me talk about the ACT as a alternative to the Praxis Core. So the two biggest things that you'll hear us say is get your testing done early. The biggest reasons for testing, one is you can't get certified to teach this coming fall in 2021 without it. But the urgent thing is that city schools will not let you look for a position without those Praxis Core and Praxis 2 completed. And so one of my jobs and goals as a program manager is to get you hired before you start training with us. And so in order to do that, you have to have those tests done. Usually the hiring season opens up in April. Last year it opened early, it opened in March. So our residents were able to take advantage of like job fairs, meeting with principals contacting them, but only if they had their testing done. I know everyone at this point has put in an application for city schools, but right now it's dormant and it won't be visible until the hiring season starts and those testing requirements are completed. So with that said, Praxis Core is needed. The thing with Praxis Core, there are some things that you can do to have qualifying scores and other things to meet the qualifications of the Praxis Core. You can have a qualifying score in SAT, GRE, or ACT. ACT in particular is a great resource to take, even if you've never taken the ACT and you're thinking about core and meeting that requirement. Is one, it's a cheaper test. It's about $42 to take that exam. And the exam requirement is you need to get 24 points or higher. And that is a combined score. So between math, reading, science, and I think it's social studies on that test. If you're great in reading, but not so great in math, and you still get a 24, it counts. With a Praxis Core, it is about $125 to take that exam. And you have to get the passing scores for the math section, the writing section, and the reading section. And so we've been pushing you taking the ACT as a great alternative for taking the Praxis Core. In our experience, it comes out as a little more equitable for people to take, and it's a little more holistic in taking your skill level and meeting that requirement. The only caveat about the ACT is that it's only every other month. So the next test is December. The deadline is passed. You can do a pay a little extra to get onto the December test. After that, the next test will be February, and we'll be continuing to do and push for people that need that assessment to take it in February as well. So that's the ACT. And then one of the last things here on the questions before we open it up is tips for making people competitive on their application and the application portal and interviews. So this is a great question, and we're going to go into more depth as we go through this enrollment period, especially before the enrollment season or job season opens up with city schools. But the biggest things I will say to everyone is one, BCTR has been working in city schools for 20 years. We work a lot with a lot of the principals and stakeholders and administrative staff. And so especially principals that we work with know the program, they know who we are and how well our residents do in their first year. So there's that, you have that behind you. You also have that you're going to be getting trained during your first year. So I think what's attractive to principals is that not only are you been trained to start strong in your first year, but you're going to have continual training for that first year, a coach that's going to be working with you, and that's going to be working with the principal as well. And so that's attractive to them. The biggest thing that you can do as a resident coming into it is not worrying so much about your experience in teaching. If you have it, that's great, and you want to highlight that. But the two things that they're looking for are your why. Why are you passionately coming to teaching at this time? That is going to be something that is both above anything that they're going to be looking for. They know they're going to get training, even if you're starting at zero. They know you're going to have these resources behind you, but they want to know why are you coming to teach in Baltimore City at this time? And for most of you, like when I talk to you on these welcome calls, you know your why, but you have to be confident in that why. I'm doing this for X, Y, and Z. This is why I'm putting myself through a regular 6 weeks training and to be a city teacher. The other thing is really understanding the community that the schools are in. Tavon talked a little bit about this, that we're going to be training you on some systemic things that have happened in Baltimore, not only Baltimore, just in general with schools, that having an understanding of not only that you're here to provide a service to the students in the city of Baltimore, but also that you understand or are learning about the situations in city schools and understanding the issues and understanding how you fit in there and how you fit to make those things better.
Sean, can I jump in really quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Because where a lot of people make mistakes in being competitive with hiring is that they really believe that this work is about coming in and saving children, and we're not here to save children. That's not the work that we're doing. We're not flying in like Superman and scooping kids up out of like desperate situations. What we are coming in to do, we're coming in to support kids and help provide them with opportunities that they might not have otherwise had access to. The other thing I'll say is that through those preview days that Sean talked about, and also during your we have your preview days, and then we have your orientation. During your orientation, we're going to go over things like our mission and our vision and why we do this work. And those people who tune into those sessions and really get a deep understanding about not just their why, but also the why behind the work that the Baltimore City Teaching Residency does. And then they take that and they go back into their interviews and they use that during their interviews. Those are people who do really well. I'll also call out something that Sean said. The earlier you get those exams out of the way, the sooner you are going to be eligible for hire. a principal will look at a BCTR teacher's resume sometimes before other alternative certification programs, and also sometimes before traditionally certified teachers, because they understand the coaching value that's going to come with that resident, that the teacher's not just going to come to the school and not have any support. But they want to see those applications early. And the way that you get your applications seen early, you get those interviews done early, is that you get that testing done. So really heeding the word of Sean when Sean is saying, hey, maybe take the ACT or take the practice and take that very early. Again, as soon as you get that out of the way, the moment City Schools clicks that button and says hiring is open, then your application is out there and you're not having to wait until July or August when the pool's really saturated with a lot of folks, and is a little more competitive.
Thanks, Tavon. With that, I will add one more thing before we open up to some questions here, is that of the 20 years that we've been in existence, for people that pass the pre-service training, we've been able to place 100% of those people into positions. Each year, getting placed in the position is different, and there are different opportunities and challenges each year, but that is something that we are super proud of coming into each year with our residents. So with that, we're going to open up. You can feel free to come off mute, be respectful of people coming in, or you can just throw a question in the chat if you like, on anything that both Tavon and I have talked about, or you want some clarity on it, or there's something that we totally didn't hit on that you're interested in. Now is your time.
Sean, I'm going to call someone out because I saw a hand go up in the chat. I think it's Brittany.
Yes, sir.
How are you? I saw a hand in the chat, and you've been really patient.
Oh no, somebody said hi and I just was waving. It's a waving.
Oh, you're just waving. Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
I actually have a question. How do you recommend, what do you recommend, what kind of advice do you recommend for people coming in and they're trying to pass pre-service training? What are the things that you've seen in successful residents that's allowed them to pass and succeed and move forward?
No, that's a great question. I will, again, I'm all about being transparent, and I think that's important to you understanding what you're about to get yourself into. Pre-service training is hard. When I came through pre-service training, I quit my job in June. My daughter was just born in April, so I had a newborn baby at home. I just quit my job, didn't know what was going to happen, didn't know if I was going to pass pre-service training or not. One of the best and the biggest pieces of advice that I can give you is, one, reserve your time. It's going to be definitely important that you talk to your loved ones around you. If you're married, talk to your husband or your wife. If you have children, talk to your kids. If you don't have either one of those, talk to your friends and let them know that for the next 6 weeks doing pre-service training, you're really going to need their help, and you're going to need their help with both emotionally and physically. There are going to be some things that you're just not going to be able to do during that 6-week time period. I had a really rough time keeping my house clean, but thank God my wife was around, because I just couldn't find the time to do it, because you are going through a 6-week program and doing things that it takes people 4 years to do. And so like that part is really important. The second part that's really important is listen to your coaches. We spend a lot of time during the spring working with actual Baltimore City public schools teachers, getting them hired, getting them trained, getting them normed on our rubrics, to work with you all, and they have your best interest at heart. We want to see as many teachers as possible come through and work with our students, people who have the right heart for our students, and again, who who want to do this work. So one, reserve the time. Two, like listen to your coaches. And then three, I would just say be humble. We are a organization. BCTR is a part of TNTP, and our organization prides itself on feedback. I manage Sean. Sean gives me feedback, and vice versa. And so you better believe you're going to get feedback from your coaches, and you're going to get a lot of feedback from your coaches. And you just have to humble yourself. This is not a career that you come into and you get things right the first time. If you have been successful in everything you've done, you're going to come into teaching, and it's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard. And you're going to have to stick in there, because it's not that immediate, I come in, I got this, I'm good. It's growth over a period of time. So those are a couple of things that I would say.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions here about Praxis here. I did put in the chat a link to Khan Academy. This is a Praxis core resource. Specifically, it's free. It is made in conjunction with ETS, which administers the Praxis exams. We found the residents that have taken that towards like Praxis core do significantly well on their exam. It is a great resource. It really targets your areas that you need growth in. It also, some of it translates a little bit to the Praxis to elementary ed, not one-to-one, but it is a good information there. As far as Praxis 2, there's not a ton of resources. We are in the process of trying to build some resources now for Praxis 2, just because Praxis 2 is so specialized in the subject areas, there isn't a lot. But as we get more and more resources, we will put them out there. Most of our residents have found just like the help books that you can get from Amazon for the Praxis 2 have been helpful to them in the past. Again, also too, in the Praxis vein, people have asked about the Praxis needed for PASS training. We're requiring that you have Praxis 2 a Praxis core done before training in June. Obviously, we want it done early so that we can get you hired. But before you come to pre-service training, you have to have Praxis 2 and Praxis core completed.
Just to clarify there, when you look up Praxis 2, you're going to see 2 Praxis 2 exams. Sean and the recruitment team will specify which one of those exams like you need to take. It is the content exam and not the PLT. The PLT you'll take later on during your second year teaching. 2 things. One, I know that we were talking about just places to live in Baltimore. I'm also dropping a link to Live Baltimore in the chat box. Live Baltimore is an organization that helps folks find homes in Baltimore, whether you're renting or wanting to buy, and they also get you acclimated with some programs if you're interested in buying a house in Baltimore to get you some discounts and things of that nature. And then I saw some more questions just around pre-service training. Sean, if I can jump back in with that. Someone said, in terms of pre-service training, what are the requirements? So we use a rubric called I'm having a brain fart. We use a rubric that we use during the summer, in which we evaluate a couple of different areas. The first area is culture of learning. Again, that is how you are working with your students. Are you building a culture? Are you addressing behavior in a classroom with your students? The second area is essential content. That is, are you taking the curriculum that is given to you and actually teaching it so that students have access to grade level material? You also have demonstration of learning. Are kids actually learning based upon what you are teaching them? And then academic ownership, that part is all about, are you giving students an opportunity to do the thinking in a lesson, or are you just standing in front of a group of kids and lecturing to them? So that is one way that you're evaluated. You're also evaluated on your lesson plans. We also have essential traits, and those things are really baseline expectations that you are supposed to come in with things like professionalism, showing up on time to sessions, application of feedback, and things of that nature. The thing that separates those, who pass from those who fail is honestly, seriously about implementing the feedback from your coach. The feedback from your coach is all about them trying to get you. During the summer, we rate on the rubric all the way up to a 3, or what we call a developing. They're going to try to get you to a developing. For a lot of it, our coaches are like, if someone's not at a developing, that looks bad on me. So they're really trying to push you, and the feedback that they're giving you will push you there. And then Sierra had a question just around how residents are doing right now, teaching during COVID. And the honest answer is it's hard. Teaching in this virtual world. I just got finished a call at the end of last week with some of our residents, and I told them they are the first ever cohort of residents to ever have to teach in this virtual world. It's never been done before. But TNTP as a virtual organization has coached virtually before. So we're still coaching our residents. We're still getting into their Zoom sessions. We're still working with them in real time to make sure that they have the tools that they need to be successful, even during COVID. We are still having our TNTP Academy. It is all virtual, but we are still developing those skills that way. We're still working with principals and school leaders to make sure that school-based mentors are still working with teachers. And outside of all of that, we're also just trying to make sure that our residents are okay. So whether it's through our Black Educator Excellence cohort, or whether it's just through one of our all cohort meetings, we're coming together to just talk about how are things going. What help do you need? Whether it's like something with teaching, or whether it's just like, hey, I need a break. I need to talk about what's happening. We're trying to find those opportunities as well. But again, how our residents doing is hard. Some teachers are like doing fantastic, and some teachers need some additional help. And that's kind of the spectrum.
Thank you, Tavon. One other quick thing about praxis testing that I saw here was just about how difficult it is to pass the praxis exams, or how often people struggle. It really depends. So it depends on how well you do a test. And so it really is kind of taking an assessment of like how well you do it with tests, how well you know the material. I would look at the Khan Academy for some of that information, or just some of the study books, to see if that knowledge is something that you know pretty well, or something you need to dig into. And then you have to assess yourself, like how much anxiety do I have taking a test, and really factor that into it. With the praxis test, there's no limit on how many times you can take. They do have you wait 30 days between tests to take. And so you can retake the test as many times as you want. That's another reason why we want you to test as early as possible. So that if you do miss something on a test, like something for the elementary ed, there's 4 sections to that. If you pass 3 of them and miss 1, then you only have to focus on that 1 section. Some other strategies of people just taking 1 section at a time is helpful, so that you don't have to sit for a whole exam. Each test is a little different between subjects. So some of them are very content heavy. Some of them are very specific to age appropriate teaching. But do the research now into your particular exam. Ask me any questions that come up in your research of that exam that I can help you with. But it is important that you dig in as early as possible. The tests are hard, and it is an expense. But getting those tests is a big part of the battle done. Once those tests are done, you can focus in on hiring. You can focus in on just getting your mindset right for pre-service training, and not have to worry about those things when training comes. You can be totally devoted to that time. So it seems like a very administrative thing that we're pushing the test, but it has some very real challenges or opportunities for you in passing or not passing those exams. And so the most important thing right now is to pass those exams beyond preparing your resume, beyond getting the knowledge of where you're going to teach and things of that nature. That stuff is relatively easy compared to getting the testing done. And so for some people it's easy, but for others it is a struggle, and you have to do that work early.
Sean, I dropped and everyone, I dropped a link to our TNTP core rubric. I wouldn't go crazy with this because we are going to go over the core rubric as you get closer to pre-service training. But just in case you wanted to see what one of the biggest elements are of our evaluation during the summer, you can click on that and you can kind of dig into that rubric and those areas of that rubric. Again, it is there. I wouldn't stress out about it. I wouldn't dig into it too much. But if you just want a high level view of what that looks like. And Sean, it looks like there's another practice question in here about when the latest we should be looking at take practice. You want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So the first answer is, like I said, early as possible. I know there's a couple of you, most of you have already registered for Praxis 2. I see in there a lot of people have registered for December, January, February, which is great. If you've registered for March, April, you've probably gotten a message from me to say, hey, hiring may start at this time. Please look at trying to do something earlier. And so I would say ideally you want to have testing done by February. You guys are in so early. I would take advantage of that time. I know that there's a lot going on, but trust me, once things get going, you're going to have less time. So February is idyllic. Like I said, you have to have these tests done before you start pre-service training. You have to have them done before the hiring process. Ultimately, the end of May, we will accept tests up to the end of May, but we want people to have them done by February. If I see that people aren't done by February, I'm going to be pushing you to like, when's your next test? When's the next time? And it's going to seem a little annoying, but it is really in your best interest to get you guys hired. So February is a great time to be done. But you have up until the end of May to get those scores in if you failed and need to retake. And someone also asked, yeah, you can take like say you pass 2 of the 3 sections, you can just take that one section over again until you pass it. You don't have to worry about, once you pass a section, you don't have to retake it. As we're winding down here, we can take a couple more questions off mute if people want to ask that way.
I do have one question. It's kind of going back to the hiring. You mentioned about like fairs, I guess you could say, like job fairs where schools. Mm-hmm. I'm from kind of a little ways away. So if they're not virtual, will we have like sufficient notice about them? So if they are in person, I would be able to come up if it's an in-person fair. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So right now, most of them are virtual. That may change. It depends. Sometimes they kind of pop up and some of them are kind of well in advance. Usually we try to put our orientation around the same time that they're doing job fairs. So usually at least one job fair falls during one of the orientation times. So it depends on just timing for that. And I will get that information out as soon as I can to people. The job fairs also go all the way into August. So although not ideal, there are people going to be looking for positions during pre-service training and have those resources, available to them. But like I said, as early as I can get those out to everyone, I will. And there's usually like a week or two lead time on some of these things. But the main thing is that once you've finished test and the hiring time is opened up, you'll be visible to principals. So we're going to be working with principals and saying, hey, these are some of our residents, and they may be contacting you directly, and you can contact them directly as well and set up interview times, which a lot of our residents have done in the past. It's just, I wasn't able to go to the job fair, but I know you have a position open and meet with principals that way.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
Sean.
you.
The other thing I would say, Tanya, is just that our principals have worked with BCTR for years, and we always have residents that come from out of town. And so when you are released to hire and as principals start to contact you, you can call that out for them. Hey, I'm moving to Baltimore, but I'm still in X state. Are we able to do this virtually? And a lot of principals will go ahead and either do a call or like a Zoom call or something of that nature to do the interview. So I wouldn't be as concerned with that. They are a very small percentage of principals. And usually it's our older principals who are like, I don't know about that. But most of them will do something virtual.
Thank you.
We'll take one or two more questions.
Sean?
Yes. Hey, Andres.
Hi, good to see you again.
Yeah.
And nice to meet you too, Tevin, and everybody else. I do not want to assume what seems to me obvious, but I live in the DC area. I guess I don't have to live in Baltimore. I can commute every day, right?
Yes, we've had residents commute from DC. As a sub person that used to work in DC, the commute can be a little heavy, so you'll definitely have to give yourself some extra time. But it's doable. We've had people do that for the summer training and for positions as well.
Yeah, I'm already making plans for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do most of the residents like live in Baltimore, or like where do most of the residents end up living?
You want to take that, Tavon?
Yeah, I can. I don't know where these people live. Don't ask me that. I'm just joking. A lot of our residents, and Sean, you can check me on a percentage, but about 40%, somewhere between 30 and 40% of people already like live in Baltimore when they apply. And then we have a larger percentage who are local to the state of Maryland. So most people either live in Baltimore City or one of the surrounding counties. We don't have people who live any further than like DC. Usually like that's far enough of a commute for folks, especially with the demand of the summer training. If we are in person, some days training starts at 7:30 in the morning. And so you can just tag on, your commute on top of that. If you're not from Baltimore and you're going to be like looking into like different neighborhoods to live in and things of that nature, I would definitely look at that Live Baltimore site and then other teacher props that Sean sent, because it kind of breaks down the neighborhoods. Baltimore is really a city of neighborhoods. You could go 3 blocks east and it's a totally different experience than where you are. And so I would call that out. But we do have most people live in Baltimore, one of the surrounding counties.
I have a quick question. At the hiring event, if a school has a need to hire you in a different subject, are you kind of locked into whatever you've been assigned, or is there some, can you be fluid in that area?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So because you're going to be going on to a provisional certification during your first 2 years, you have to teach in your subject area in the grade levels that are presented. So if you are any secondary, like math, chemistry, biology, English, you can only teach those subjects between 7th grade and 12th grade. If you're elementary ed, you can only teach elementary between 1st and 6th grade. If you're early childhood, that is pre-K to 3rd grade. And so that's pretty strict per requirement of your certification. Yeah.
Do you mean your undergrad or the praxis content course that you take?
Say that part again.
So do you mean that like whatever you teach has to be related to your undergrad degree or to whatever content test that you take? So like if I
No.
take a content, my praxis content in math, English. Okay.
Yeah. So when you came in, you were put in a subject area. It doesn't have to match what your degree or your majority of your content for undergrad or grad school, but you've been assigned, and you can see this in your Salesforce application. Either you've gotten like elementary ed or biology or those things. You have to stay within that subject area. So like if you were, a good example of this is if you're biology and you have a degree in chemistry and a school offers you a chemistry position, you can't take it because you're specified to do biology, and your content exam is going to be in biology, and your training is
Okay, that was my question.
Yep.
For special ed, did they differentiate mild to moderate versus moderate to severe when we're looking for a position?
It's a good question.
I can take that, Sean. They don't. And so one of the things that you will want to do as you're interviewing with principals is you'll want to ask those questions about your caseload and even how their school approaches special ed. There's sometimes our residents get hired strictly for push-in services. And then sometimes our residents get hired to have their own self-contained classroom. And so those are questions that you'll want to have written down and just get those answers before you accept the position, so you really understand whether or not that's going to work to your skill set.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have another question. I'm sorry, back to the grade level. How do we know if we were elementary ed or not? Would have had specified elementary?
Yeah, so if you go into your Salesforce application and there's information about your demographic in there, it has your name and your phone number and all that. It also says subject, and that subject is your subject area that you're going to be training with us in. You should have, when you applied for a Praxis 2 test in your subject area. So if you were elementary ed, you would have applied for the Praxis 2 elementary ed content for math, the math content area.
Okay, got it.
Great. Well, we want to thank you guys for coming out. Again, like we keep saying, that it's super exciting for us to see you guys coming into teaching, especially now with everything going on with COVID. It just a testament to you guys having a strong passion to really teach in the midst of a lot of uncertainty in teaching and in the world at the moment. But believe that you're desperately needed in city schools to provide great teaching to the students here. So for some of you that I haven't talked to yet, please, if you haven't, make sure you sign up for a welcome call. Remember to get transcripts in. If you have any questions, contact me. Again, we'll always push testing. Any questions about testing, let me know. Anything that will help you get that testing done. You should be getting that weekly update too about what tasks you're going to be doing. The last thing I will say is there's going to be an enrollment course task that's coming in a couple weeks, and I'll explain a little bit more. We'll have another session around the enrollment course. The enrollment course is really a self-paced, self-guided course that you do that has to be done before pre-service training, but you do it at your own pace. It helps you get into the right mindset, and we'll have another session with staff about that course in December. But other than that, it's great talking to you guys. Again, if you think of things later, just email me and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Thank
Yeah.
you. You
Have a good one.
too.